back to the discussions. Now it's my turn to actually talk since I haven't said anything. My topic is kind of like racism. It has a lot to do with racism, but it puts you in an angle that we normally don't look at. My topic is fear-induced generalized racism. Basically what it is you're being racist towards a race. Like a good example is being racist towards Muslims for what the Taliban has done. The Taliban or other terrorist groups destroyed was on 9/11. We all know this for a fact. And a lot of people resent Muslims for what they did.
Because the Taliban was Muslim, right?
Yes,
okay.
Because the terrorist groups were saying, we do this in the name of what they believe to be their God race, which is Muslims. That's what they believe. And a lot of people, and I've met people who say they dislike Muslims, and they fear them just because they have the hat, and they have their beards, and all those kinds of things.
Generalize.
And they generalize that to be, they generalize the fact that a group of terrorists killed 3,000 people on 9/11. And so we automatically think Muslims are the reason for that, even though only a small group of Muslims did it. But they said it in the name of Muslims. So we automatically think all Muslims are bad because we feared a couple of them. Another good example is many years after World War II, people still feared Germans for what Nazis did. And they said it was for the good of Germany. And so they automatically figured all Germans were Nazis and caused World War II. And as an ancestry of Germans, and my great-great-great-grandfather was pure German, and his words were pretty much, I was never Nazi, nor did I ever support them. They just got control of the government. But we feared them for it. Go ahead.
It's just like anything. I mean, like even a style of dress. If a certain group dresses a certain style and then like they do something wrong, like I don't know, shoplift, it's like it ruins it for the whole group that dresses that way.
Exactly.
Yeah, in most malls now, you are not allowed to wear hoodies.
Yeah.
Because
stores.
Yeah.
And like you'll like walk in and like a certain wearing a certain thing and like you know the shopkeepers or the people who work there will just like closely watch you like, the whole time you're there, and it's like it's like a natural tendency for people to do that for some reason, and it's like I hate stereotyping. It's ridiculous.
Well, that goes all into profiling, which we'll cover later.
Exactly.
And like when we see like a person of like an Arab descent, we automatically think they're terrorist because of 9/11. But what's interesting is when we see someone who's white, we don't match them up with the KKK, who are Christians. So why do we dismiss white people? But seriously, but why do we? Okay, go ahead. Because you have it down. But you know, that's something that I kind of think about. You know, like we categorize them, but we don't categorize.
A good example of fear-induced generalized racism is you think of the Taliban, equals Muslims, right? So what equals Christianity? The KKK. They did it in the name of Christianity. And we don't like to think of that very often because it's against our norms nowadays anyways. It's against the norms. But the KKK did and does what they do. They do still exist. They're just...
They do still exist.
Yeah, they don't attack blacks as often. They don't attack them in such insane ways as they did back in the past. But now they also attack Muslims and anyone who's basically outside of the norms.
Mhm.
You're
And
a minority, they'll attack you.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Because it's not just blacks. I learned that. I always thought like the KKK only, killed and hurt and hung blacks. But it's like I look through history and it's not that at all. It's only the people who were a minority. Anyone who didn't look like them, pretty much.
Mhm.
You have a question?
I was just gonna say, like, with like Taliban or Muslim, like you can tell like physically when someone's Muslim, darker skin, maybe like different other things, but like if someone's white, you can't remember. It's like maybe they're German, maybe they're Russian, maybe they're
Mhm.
American, maybe they're all sorts of things that you can't really like tell as much
That's
like
true.
white people, because white people are so spread out through Europe and America and other places too, like
But-
Australia and stuff.
I want to interject there. I think that, I don't really think it's fair to say that you can identify a Muslim just from what a person looks like, because I think there is a huge diversity of Muslim people.
Nobody looks the same.
So some people, if we're talking about the Muslim religion, you don't have to be a person of Arab descent to be Muslim. Like that's not the case. And even if you are, you may wear your style of dress may be typically Western, or it may be it may involve a hijab and other more sort of physically identifiable kinds of styles of dress. But I think it's really important that we recognize, and that's part of why we. I think that it leads into this, what you're talking about, generalized. What is it? Generalized fear-induced generalized racism. That we have these stereotypes, and then when we see someone we think fits into that stereotype, that sets off our warning, our little warning bells, our racist warning bells that go off.
Yeah, and Cache did make a valid point. Good correction. They did in the name of Islam?
Islam.
Islam, sorry. I didn't get my fact on that one straight. And another thing is, I shouldn't say Muslims, I should say Middle Eastern descents, because a lot of them have some of the features, not all of them, and they do look different. But a lot of people will just generalize on the darker skin, maybe, I'm sorry, I can't remember the
Turban.
name. Turban. They see a turban, they immediately think hijab, which is not as much as a fashion. It is part religion, but also it's very cool and temperature-wise. That's literally the whole point of it. But people will see it as a terrorist thing. And a very small version of this is people generalize through fear. A good example is Denver, I forgot the name of the school. There was a gun. Columbine, thank you.
Oh.
Some people put that to violent video games.
Yeah.
It's very small and it has nothing to do with racism, but it's an example of fear generalization.
Well, to relate it to racism, when we see on the news and we see a black person robbing a convenience store, people will stereotype and be like, that's how all black men are. They're a bunch of thugs. That's the stereotype, that's the generalizations that we make. Because we see one person in that community do something, we think that they all do it. And the reason why we think that way is because they're different from us. Because we hear cases of, white men who are doing it in the name of God and Christianity, who are blowing up Planned Parenthood centers. So, but yet we don't label every white person as someone who's going to potentially bomb a building,
Which is true, and I like to